At my grandson's birthday party, there wasn't a seat for me. My daughter-in-law said, "Oops, looks like we miscounted." Everyone laughed. No one said a word in my defense. I left without making a fuss and canceled the checks. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and drop the name of your city in the comments so I can see how far this reaches. I should have trusted my gut the moment I stepped into that backyard. Everything looked flawless. Blue and silver balloons tied to every chair. A superhero cake that probably cost more than a week's worth of groceries. Table set up with precision. It all screamed money, which didn't surprise me since I'd been the one writing the checks. But when I walked up to the main table, the one meant for family, I slowed down. I counted the chairs once, then again, 7 people, 6 chairs. Grandma, Edith Ezra came running toward me, his 8-year-old face lighting up. His Spider-Man costume looked brand new, something else I'd paid for. No one even asked. I hugged him close, breathing in that sweet, familiar scent only little kids have. But my eyes kept going back to that table. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I whispered. "You having a good time?" "The best." "Did you see the bounce house? And Mom got a magician coming later." Of course she did. Jolene never did anything halfway, especially when someone else was footing the bill. "Edith, you made it." Jolene's voice was all sugar, but there was something sharp under it. She floated over in the designer dress I'd seen on the credit card statement last month, the one I helped pay off. Her smile was polished, rehearsed. "We're so glad you're here." I nodded toward the table. "Where should I sit?" Her eyes followed mine, and for just a second, something flickered across her face. Satisfaction, maybe. Then she gasped, hand on her chest. "Oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. We must have miscounted when we set up. Like I was some random guest that they forgot to plan for." "It's fine," I heard myself say, even though my chest had gone tight. "I can grab a chair from No, don't be silly," she cut in, waving her hand like I'd said something ridiculous. "There's plenty of seats at the other tables. You'll be more comfortable anyway, closer to the bar." She laughed. A few adults around us joined in. My son Russell walked up then, slid an arm around her waist like husbands do. He looked at the table, then looked at me. I waited for him to say something, to ask why his own mother didn't have a seat with the rest of the family. Instead, he gave me a sheepish smile. "Sorry, Mom, you know how crazy party planning gets. Jolene's been so stressed trying to make everything perfect for Ezra." Stressed, planning a party with my money had stressed her out. I stood there a little too long. People were starting to show up, parents I didn't recognize, dropping off kids who'd eat cake I'd paid for while the birthday boy's grandma sat with strangers. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice even. "I understand." But I didn't. Not really. What I understood was, this wasn't a mistake. They'd counted the chairs carefully, 6 for the ones who counted, none for the one who made it all happen. I found a seat at one of the smaller tables and put my purse down next to a woman I'd never met. She smiled, barely, then went back to scrolling her phone. The party moved on around me. Kids yelling in the bounce house, adults talking in small clusters, sipping wine and chatting about soccer games and vacation plans. From where I sat, I had a clear view of the family table. Jolene held court right in the center, arms flying as she told some story that had everyone laughing. Russell nodded along, fully caught up in the show his wife was putting on. Ezra sat between them, happy and clueless, the little prince of this perfectly staged setup. And I sat alone, watching like a stranger. My purse felt heavier than it should have, the weight of my phone pulling at me. I pulled it out, fingers shaking just a little as I opened the banking app. The list lit up like a confession. Mortgage, car loans, Ezra's private school tuition, Jolene's credit card bill, one payment after another, month after month, year after year. All this time, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being the kind of mother, the kind of grandmother they could count on. I thought money could buy me a place at the table. Turns out, all it did was make me invisible. The magician showed up to wild cheers from the kids. While he set up, Jolene stood and tapped her wine glass with a fork. "Everyone, can I have your attention? I just want to thank you all for being here to celebrate our Ezra's special day. This party wouldn't have been possible without." She paused, eyes scanning until they landed on mine, still smiling. "Without all the love and support from family and friends." Love and support. Not a word about who actually paid for any of it. I sat through the magic show. The cake, the singing, I watched Ezra blow out his candles and make a wish, probably for more toys or games, things you could get with a credit card. When the party started wrapping up and parents came to collect their sugar-charged kids, I walked over to say goodbye to Ezra. He threw his arms around me, chocolate frosting smeared across his cheek. "Thank you for my present, Grandma. I love the Lego set." "You're welcome, baby." I kissed the top of his head and took in one last breath of him. Then I looked up. Jolene was staring. Her face gave nothing away. "Thanks for coming, Edith," she said, all polite and polished. "Sorry about the seating mix-up. The word hit like something sour. I drove home in silence, every moment of the party playing back in my mind. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't hurt either. I was just done. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled up my bank records. Transfer after transfer, payment after payment. Thousands, leaving every month to take care of a family that didn't even care enough to make sure I had a chair. I started with the mortgage, canceled. Then the car notes, canceled, one by one. I cut every automatic payment, every single withdrawal, every line that tied me to people who only saw me as a wallet with legs. When I was done, I shut the laptop and leaned back. Tomorrow, they'd finally see what my love and support were actually worth. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. 3 days went by before the first call came in. I was watering the garden when Russell's name popped up. I let it ring, went back to my tomatoes. At least they appreciated the attention. But the calls didn't stop. Russell, Jolene, even Ezra's school, probably wondering why tuition hadn't come through. I ignored every one of them. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat down with the calculator. Something I should have done a long time ago. I started adding up exactly how much loving this family had cost me. The numbers were unbelievable. It started small. It always does. When Russell and Jolene got married 15 years ago, they were young and barely making it. Just help with the wedding, Russell had asked. Just help with the down payment on the house. Just until they could get their footing. 15 years later, I was still the one holding them up. The mortgage came to $2,247 a month. I'd been covering it for 8 years. Ever since Russell's contracting business started sliding and never found ground again. Jolene's car note was $651 a month for that luxury SUV she swore was essential when Ezra was born, for safety, of course. Russell's truck, $492 a month, because apparently, you can't swing a hammer unless your ride costs more than someone else's house. Ezra's private school tuition was $200 a month. Public school was never good enough for Jolene's golden boy. Utilities ran $300 to $400 depending on how low Jolene set the AC. Insurance, another $400 a month for their cars and their house. Groceries, Jolene got into the habit of texting me photos of her receipts, always with a little excuse. Some surprise expense that brought her total to around $800 to $1,000 every month. Credit cards. This one made my hands shake. Jolene's spending sprees left piles of debt, and I'd been quietly chipping away at it for years. Another $500 a month in minimum payments that never actually made a dent, because she never stopped charging. Then there were the vacations, trips to Disney, weekends at beach houses, little getaways Jolene couldn't resist posting about with captions like, "So thankful for family who support our adventures." It averaged $500 to $800 a month once you spread it across the year. Medical bills, Ezra's braces, Jolene's skin treatments, Russell's therapy sessions after he threw out his back moving furniture instead of paying a mover. Whatever their insurance didn't handle, I did. Then there were clothes, Jolene's wardrobe for her boutique job, Ezra's endless rotation of shoes and sports gear, Russell's work clothes. Every month, more money leaving my hands. Home improvements, too. The new kitchen Jolene had to have, the bathroom upgrade, the landscaping, the pool upkeep. "It's an investment in the house, Mom," Russell would say, like I'd ever see a dime of it back. When I finally totaled everything, I sat there staring at the number until my eyes burned. Just in the last 5 years, I'd given them $387,000, almost $400,000 from my late husband's life insurance, my own savings, my retirement. For what? To end up sitting at someone else's table while they laughed with their friends. I poured another glass of wine and kept digging. It was the smaller things too. Birthday gifts that cost hundreds because Jolene would drop hints about what Ezra really wanted. Christmas presents that got more outrageous every year. Easter baskets that looked like they'd been looted from a toy aisle. Halloween costumes more expensive than most folks' monthly grocery bill. And always, there were Jolene's emergencies. The laptop that died and had to be replaced that day. The water heater that couldn't wait for an estimate. The surgery Ezra needed when he broke his arm and they didn't have the deductible. Always urgent, always necessary, always covered by Grandma Edith. I thought about the women at the senior center, my age, figuring out how to stretch pills or heat their homes or buy food. And here I was, underwriting a lifestyle most young couples couldn't even fake. They didn't just take from me, they convinced me to help them do it. Jolene had a talent for making her asks sound like kindnesses. "I know how much you love spoiling Ezra," she'd say, nudging me towards some overpriced gadget or trip. "We just want to make sure he knows how generous his grandmother is." Whenever she needed cash, I'd hear something like, "I saw this dress. That would be perfect for Ezra's school play, but it's a bit out of our price range right now." You probably think it's ridiculous how much I care about appearances, but I just want Ezra to be proud of his mom. She made me feel like the doting grandma, the one who could afford to pitch in, the loving family member who was so generous she couldn't help but share what she had. But really, I'd become an ATM with emotions. Russell was just as manipulative, only in his own way. Ezra's private school tuition was $200 a month. Public school was never good enough for Jolene's golden boy. Utilities ran $300 to $400 depending on how low Jolene set the AC. Insurance, another $400 a month for their cars and their house. Groceries. Jolene got into the habit of texting me photos of her receipts, always with a little excuse. Some surprise expense that brought her total to around $800 to $1,000 every month. Credit cards. This one made my hands shake. Jolene's spending sprees left piles of debt, and I'd been quietly chipping away at it for years. Another $500 a month in minimum payments that never actually made a dent because she never stopped charging. Then there were the vacations. Trips to Disney, weekends at beach houses. Little getaways Jolene couldn't resist posting about with captions like, "So thankful for family who support our adventures." It averaged $500 to $800 a month once you spread it across the year. Medical bills, Ezra's braces, Jolene's skin treatments, Russell's therapy sessions after he threw out his back-moving furniture instead of paying a mover. Whatever their insurance didn't handle, I did. Then there were clothes, Jolene's wardrobe for her boutique job, Ezra's endless rotation of shoes and sports gear, Russell's work clothes, every month, more money leaving my hands. Home improvements, too, the new kitchen Jolene had to have, the bathroom upgrade, the landscaping, the pool upkeep. "It's an investment in the house, Mom," Russell would say, like I'd ever see a dime of it back. When I finally totaled everything, I sat there staring at the number until my eyes burned. Just in the last 5 years, I'd given them $387,000, almost $400,000 from my late husband's life insurance, my own savings, my retirement. For what? To end up sitting at someone else's table while they laughed with their friends? I poured another glass of wine and kept digging. It was the smaller things too. Birthday gifts that cost hundreds because Jolene would drop hints about what Ezra really wanted. Christmas presents that got more outrageous every year. Easter baskets that looked like they'd been looted from a toy aisle. Halloween costumes more expensive than most folks' monthly grocery bill. And always, there were Jolene's emergencies. The laptop that died and had to be replaced that day. The water heater that couldn't wait for an estimate. The surgery Ezra needed when he broke his arm and they didn't have the deductible. Always urgent, always necessary, always covered by Grandma Edith. I thought about the women at the senior center, my age, figuring out how to stretch pills or heat their homes or buy food. And here I was, underwriting a lifestyle most young couples couldn't even fake. They didn't just take from me, they convinced me to help them do it. Jolene had a talent for making her asks sound like kindnesses. "I know how much you love spoiling Ezra," she'd say, nudging me toward some overpriced gadget or trip. "We just want to make sure he knows how generous his grandmother is." Whenever she needed cash, I'd hear something like, "I saw this dress. That would be perfect for Ezra's school play, but it's a bit out of our price range right now." You probably think it's ridiculous how much I care about appearances, but I just want Ezra to be proud of his mom. She made me feel like the doting grandma, the one who could afford to pitch in, the loving family member who was so generous she couldn't help but share what she had. But really, I'd become an ATM with emotions. Russell was just as manipulative, only in his own way. But her last message, that one actually made me laugh. What are we supposed to tell Ezra when we pull him out of school and have to sell the house? What were they supposed to say? Maybe start with the truth, that they'd been living beyond their means for years, bankrolled by a grandmother they never really saw until they needed something. Or maybe tell him, your choices have consequences, and eventually, the way you treat people comes back around. That night, as I got ready for bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. For the first time in ages, I wasn't carrying anyone else's burdens. I wasn't solving anyone's problems or covering for anyone's mess. I knew things would heat up tomorrow. Jolene might show up. Russell would probably keep calling. They'd come with guilt trips, with anger, with all the manipulation they'd used on me for years. But I wasn't the same woman who walked out of Ezra's birthday party 3 days ago. That version of me was still hoping to belong, still willing to pay for her seat at the table. But the woman I am now, she knows the difference between being loved and being used, and she's not going back. Jolene showed up exactly a week after I stopped the payments. I watched her from the window as she sat in the back of a taxi, taking a few deep breaths before getting out. Guess she still hadn't managed to replace the car. She was dressed for the occasion. Black dress, to look serious and put together. Barely any makeup to seem a little worn down, and her hair pulled back like she was just another tired mom trying her best. I waited through 3 knocks before I opened the door. When I opened the door, her face folded into the same pitiful expression I'd come to recognize over the years. The fake tears she could summon, like flipping a switch whenever she needed something. "Edith, thank God you're home. We need to talk." I didn't invite her in. I just stepped out onto the porch and crossed my arms. "What do you want, Jolene?" That caught her off guard. She'd probably pictured me letting her in, offering tea, asking what was wrong. That's what the old me would have done. "What do I want?" she shot back, her voice climbing fast. "Edith, you're tearing this family apart. Ezra cried himself to sleep last night because we had to tell him he might have to switch schools. So, there it was, the Ezra card. She always knew how to hit where it hurt, and my grandson had always been her sharpest weapon. What I want," I said, keeping my voice steady, "is for you and Russell to take responsibility for your lives." Jolene's face flushed. "Responsibility? We've been busting our asses trying to give our son a decent life. You think this has been easy for us? Asking for help? Depending on you?" The lie was so bold it actually stunned me. "You depended on me for 15 years. Must not have hated it that much." "We didn't have a choice," she snapped, and I saw Mrs. Callahan across the street stop mid-reach with her mail, clearly eavesdropping. Jolene saw her too and dropped her voice, but her tone stayed sharp. "Russell's business tanked after the recession. I've been working part-time just so I can be there for Ezra. We've been doing the best we can, and what you've had," I replied, low and firm, "has always included my money. So much that you forgot it was mine." Jolene's mask cracked. "You offered. Every single time, you offered. You said you wanted to help. You said you loved taking care of your family. Don't act like we forced you." She wasn't wrong. I had offered, but what she left out was the way she got me there. The quiet manipulations, the sob stories, the guilt tripping over Ezra's broken heart or their unpaid bills. She knew exactly how to make me feel like the bad guy if I didn't fix everything. With a check. "You're right," I said, and she almost looked like she believed she'd won. "I did offer, and now I'm taking it back." She went pale. "You can't do this to us. We have bills, contracts. The mortgage company doesn't care that you're upset, Edith. They want their money. Then you better figure out how to pay them." "With what?" she screamed, finally dropping the act. "Russell's barely scraping by to keep food on the table, and what I make can't even cover a decent grocery run. You know what we're dealing with. You've always known." And that was the heart of it. I'd always known their reality, how they'd built a life they couldn't pay for and just assumed I'd bankroll it forever. They never once tried to budget or live within their means, mostly because they never had to. "Maybe you should look for a better job," I said. "Maybe Russell could grow his business or pick up some side work. Maybe it's time to move into a home you can actually afford." Jolene looked at me like I'd told her to relocate to another planet. "We can't just uproot Ezra. His whole world is here, his school, his friends, his activities, and Russell can't just pull more money out of thin air." "But I can." "Is that the idea?" Jolene, Russell can't earn more, but Grandma Edith is supposed to keep writing checks on demand. That's different. You're retired. You don't have the same weight on your shoulders. Your home's paid off. You don't have a kid to worry about. I have a grandson to worry about, I cut in. And what keeps me up at night is the kind of man he's going to grow into if he grows up watching his parents bleed, an old woman dry and call it love. The words hit her hard. She didn't say anything at first. Then the tears started again. But this time, they felt real. How can you say that? We love you, Edith thought. Ezra adores you. You're his grandmother. And still, you didn't save me a seat at his birthday party. She winced. That was a mistake. We told you we miscounted. Don't. My voice came out sharper than I meant. Don't lie to me, Jolene. Don't lie to yourself. You didn't miscount. You left me out on purpose. You've gotten so used to seeing me as a bank account that you stopped seeing me as a human being. We locked eyes across a wide, quiet gap that had never felt so deep. I could see her trying to work through it. What angle might still work? Tears weren't doing it. Anger had fizzled out. Guilt wasn't landing. What was left? Fine, she finally said. Her voice had turned cold. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. You cut us off, and you lose Ezra. You lose your son. You lose your whole family. Edith is your pride. Really worth all that? The threat just hung there, thick in the air between us. She was counting on the fact that I'd never risk losing Ezra, that I'd cave before giving that up. And 6 months ago, she would have been right. If loving Ezra means I have to pay for your life, I said quietly, then maybe I need to love him from a distance until he's old enough to understand what that really means. Jolene's mouth dropped open. She'd played her last card, and I hadn't folded. You're going to regret this, she said, backing away toward the cab. You're going to regret this so much when you're sitting in this house with no family, no grandson, no one who gives a damn about you. Just remember, you did this. I watched her climb into the cab and pull away. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. And the thing is, her threat wasn't just talk. She absolutely would try to shut me out of Ezra's life. Russell would back her like he always did. But as I stood on that porch, something I didn't expect happened. I didn't feel scared. I felt free, because Jolene had finally stopped pretending and Russell had picked his side. They weren't family. They were people who'd been using me. And the moment I stopped being useful, they showed me exactly who they were. Real family doesn't dangle love over your head like a bribe. Real family doesn't make you feel guilty for not draining your bank account just so they can stay comfortable. That night, Russell called. He sounded worn down, like life had knocked the fight out of him. Mom, please. Jolene told me what you two talked about today. She's really upset. I bet she is. Look, I know things got out of hand, but we've gotta sort this out. For Ezra, if nothing else. What exactly are we sorting out? Russell, I want the family back together. I want you in Ezra's life. I want us to figure out how to move forward. For a split second, something like hope pushed up in my chest. Maybe Russell wasn't like Jolene. Maybe he actually understood what mattered beyond the money. And what does that look like to you? I asked, keeping my voice even. Well, I know we can't just rewind everything, but maybe we can come to some kind of deal. Like, if you could just help with the basics, the mortgage, Ezra's school, we'd cut out everything else. That small flicker of hope went cold. Even now, after all this, he still wanted my money. A smaller ask, maybe, but still an ask. Russell, I said quietly, do you even understand what happened at Ezra's party? It was just a mix-up. No, it wasn't. Your wife intentionally embarrassed me in front of everyone, and you stood there and said nothing. After 15 years of paying your bills, I didn't even rate a chair at the table. That's not a misunderstanding. The silence between us dragged out. When he finally spoke, it was barely above a breath. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have said something. I should have stood up for you. Yeah, I said, you should have, but you didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know about where I sit on your list of priorities. But we can fix this. We can make it right with my money. Mom, that's not. He caught himself. It's not just about the money, is it? Then why is every solution you've offered one where I keep footing the bill for your life? I could hear Jolene in the background, her voice cutting through, sharp and insistent, though I couldn't make out the words. I've gotta go, Russell said suddenly. But Mom, please think about what you're doing. Please think about Ezra. Then the line went dead. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone. and something hit me that probably should have scared me, but didn't. Ty might never see my grandson again, but something else hit just as hard. I'd rather lose a family that only saw me as a wallet than keep paying just to be treated like trash. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't carrying them anymore. And that freedom, it turned out, was worth more than every single dollar I'd ever handed over. The quiet came instantly. It wasn't the kind of silence I'd been hoping for. It was the cold, deliberate kind that felt like being cut out of someone's life. My phone, once buzzing nonstop with so-called family check-ins that were really just veiled requests or guilt trips, went dead quiet. No more good morning texts from Russell, no snapshots of Ezra from Jolene, no advice calls that always ended with a hint for money, just nothing. I kept telling myself this was the goal. I'd paid for my independence, and silence was just the cost. But as the days dragged on, the quiet didn't feel like peace, it felt like exile. 2 weeks after Jolene dropped by, I ran into Eileen Sutter at the grocery store, Ezra's old babysitter. She'd been around our family forever and probably made more money off me than anyone else, since I always overpaid to make sure Ezra had the best care. "Mrs. Holloway," she called out from the cereal aisle. "I haven't seen you in forever. How's little Ezra doing?" Her words hit me like a punch. How was Ezra? I didn't have a clue. He's doing well," I said. Her face lit up. "I heard about the school situation. That must be so tough on all of you. But at least now, you'll get to spend more time with him, right? Silver lining and all that." I felt the blood drain from my face. "School situation. Oh, switching over to public school." She kept going. "Jolene told me when she called to ask if I could help with after-school care. She said it's just temporary while you all work things out financially." Then she looked at me differently, like something clicked. Oh no, you didn't know." I mumbled something and got out of there fast, hands trembling as I started the car. They'd really done it. They pulled Ezra out of his school. The school I'd been paying for. The one he loved, and I was finding out about it from a girl in the cereal aisle. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 3 weeks. I drove past their house. What I saw crushed me. The for sale sign on the lawn was bad enough, but it was the small things that hit the hardest. Jolene's flower boxes, once bursting with pricey annuals, were dry and dead. The lawn, usually kept neat by a service I'd always covered, was wild and patchy. Russell's truck wasn't there, probably towed or taken like Jolene's car. But the worst part was, Ezra, I could see him through the window, sitting on the floor in front of the TV, all by himself. The room looked off, empty. They must have sold furniture. I sat in my car across the street, watching my grandson's small frame, and felt like the lowest person alive. This was on me. I was the one who did this to him. My phone buzzed with a Facebook notification, something I usually ignored these days, but tonight, for some reason, I opened it. Jolene had posted a picture of Ezra at what looked like a school carnival. He was smiling, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile kids learn when grown-ups tell them to say cheese. The caption hit me hard. Ezra being brave at his new school's fall festival. "Some changes are hard, but we're grateful for the fresh start and the people who truly care about our family. Blessed, new beginnings, real family." The comments were full of praise and nosy questions. Someone asked what happened, why they switched schools. Jolene answered fast, and her words had bite. "Sometimes you find out who your real family is. We're learning to depend on ourselves and the people who actually love us unconditionally." I knew exactly what she meant. I was the one who only loved them with limits. I was the one who walked away. In the story Jolene was telling, I was the bad guy, the one who stopped helping a struggling family when they needed it most. I kept scrolling, post after post, a neat little story about how hard things had gotten. Ezra helping pack boxes, with a caption about teaching him to appreciate hard work. A picture of Jolene in a diner uniform. New job, new adventures. Sometimes life takes you in directions you never expected, but we're grateful for every blessing. She had a job now, and from what I could tell, it was full-time. Russell showed up in some pictures too, looking skinnier and more worn out than I'd ever seen him. He was working, actually working, building a deck, painting a house. None of the random side jobs he used to take when he knew I'd be there to catch the shortfall. Part of me was proud of them for finally stepping up, but most of me felt sick, watching how they'd spun their effort into a kind of sob story, with me painted as the heartless grandmother who bailed when things got tough. What hit hardest was seeing Ezra. He didn't show up in many of the posts. Jolene was careful not to milk his sadness for sympathy, but the few times he did appear, he looked smaller, quieter. One picture showed him sitting in a cramped, beat-up living room, reading a library book. No flashy toys like the ones that used to clutter their house. I wanted to call him. I wanted to hear his voice, to tell him I loved him, that Grandma missed him. But Jolene had drawn a line, and her terms were clear: no contact. 3 weeks after I saw those posts, I was out watering my garden when Mrs. Callahan from next door called to me over the fence. "Edith, dear, are you all right? I've been worried about you." I looked up, caught off guard. Mrs. Callahan had lived next door for 5 years, but we'd never been more than polite neighbors. "I'm okay, thanks. It's just ... I haven't seen your family around much. That sweet little boy who used to help you with your flowers, everything all right?" The warmth in her voice almost broke me. "We're just taking some space from each other." I got the words out. She gave a quiet nod, like she understood. Families can get messy. My daughter and I hit a rough patch a few years back. Sometimes stepping away helps, even if it's painful. "How long were you apart?" "About 6 months. Felt like forever, but it's what we needed." Sometimes people have to lose each other a little to realize how much they matter. That night I lay in bed, her words replaying over and over. 6 months. Could I really make it that long without a word? What if it dragged on even longer? What if Ezra just let go completely? Then I remembered the birthday party, sitting off to the side while Jolene held the spotlight at the table. 15 years of sending money, 15 years of being used, of only being wanted when there was something to give. Maybe some losses are worth the sting. The next morning, someone unexpected showed up. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize. She looked mid-40s, dressed neat and professional, face calm but serious. "Mrs. Holloway, I'm Miriam Ortiz, a social worker with Child Protective Services." My stomach dropped, my hand shook as I opened the door. "Is Ezra all right?" "He's fine," she said right away. "Would you mind if I came in? I just have a few questions." We sat in the living room and she pulled out a small notebook. "We received a report with concerns about a child's well-being. The person claimed a family member might be holding back money that's important for the child's care." I stared at her. "Someone called CPS because I stopped sending my son money." Her face didn't change. "Can you tell me about your relationship with your grandson and his parents?" I took a breath and told her everything. The years of wiring money, the birthday party embarrassment, the guilt trips and power plays. She listened carefully, jotting down notes here and there. "Mrs. Holloway," she said when I finished, "you're not legally responsible for financially supporting your adult son's family. Whoever made the call didn't understand how that works. But Ezra's paying the price for my choice. Is he safe? Fed, clothed, has a roof over his head? Yes, but it's not the same as before. Then he's not suffering. He's adapting. That's not the same thing." She shut her notebook. "Kids bounce back more than we give them credit for. Honestly, they're usually tougher than the adults around them." After she left, I sat there with what she said still ringing in my ears. Ezra was tough. He was figuring things out. Maybe this was exactly the kind of wake-up call he needed. To realize life isn't about chasing money, that family isn't just a financial safety net, that love isn't some transaction. That night, I made up my mind. I wrote a letter to Ezra not to send right away, but to hold on to for when he was older. I laid everything out, why I'd done what I did, how deeply I loved him, and how I hoped that one day it would all make sense to him. I sealed it in an envelope with his name and tucked it into my jewelry box, right next to my late husband's wedding band. One day, when Ezra was grown and could decide for himself what we meant to each other, he'd know the whole truth. Until then, I'd wait and try to learn something I never had much skill for. Loving someone without trying to fix everything for them. The silence lingered, but it didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like groundwork. I was starting to see who I was when I wasn't needed. It was more difficult than I thought it'd be, but at the same time, it felt like I could finally breathe. The truth came from someone I never saw coming. Trisha Benton, Jolene's old best friend. We hadn't spoken in over 2 years, not since whatever fallout they'd had, which I never fully understood. So when she called out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon, 4 months after my family had shut me out, I almost let it go to voicemail. Edith, it's Trisha. I hope it's okay, I called, but there's something I think you should hear. Her voice shook, unsure. We met at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere low-key where we wouldn't bump into anyone we used to know. Trisha looked older, worn out in a way that didn't have much to do with sleep. She ordered her coffee black and didn't waste time. I heard about what went down with you and Jolene, the money stuff. I braced myself, ready for the usual guilt trip about loyalty or Ezra. What about it? She's been telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you got paranoid and started seeing things that weren't real. Trisha clutched her coffee like it was keeping her grounded. But I know that's not the truth, because I know what she really said about you. My chest tightened. What are you saying? She inhaled deeply. Remember those dinners we used to have once a month? Girls' nights, while the guys took the kids. I nodded. Those nights had ended right when she and Jolene stopped talking. Jolene used to bring you up. A lot. And not ... Her voice faltered, but she pushed through. Not the way a daughter-in-law should talk about her husband's mother. The coffee shop suddenly felt stuffy and overcrowded. What did she say? She called you her personal ATM. She used to laugh about how easy it was to get cash out of you. She'd come up with these detailed stories, Ezra needing something, Russell's business hitting a rough patch, and she'd test them out on us first. Every word landed like a punch. Test them out. She said the trick was making you think you were being generous, not getting played. She'd go on about which buttons to press. Your guilt about not being around when Russell was growing up. Your fear of missing the important parts of Ezra's childhood. Your worry that people might think you were tight with money. I kept thinking back on all those conversations through the years. All those carefully worded asks that made me feel like I was being a good, loving grandmother. How Jolene would bring up Ezra being disappointed about a toy or a school trip. Then she'd toss in, but we understand if money's tight, knowing damn well I'd step in and pay for it. There's more, Trisha said, her voice low. She used to complain about having to include you in family stuff, said Russell, always insisted, but she wished you'd just mail a check and stay home. The birthday party. Suddenly, it all made sense. Jolene hadn't forgotten to invite me by mistake. She'd been working her way up to cutting me out for years. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I could handle the answer. Trisha's eyes welled up. Because I wasn't any better. I was jealous of how much you did for them. My own mother-in-law was cold, nothing like you. And I used to think Jolene had it made. I convinced myself she was just venting, didn't really mean what she said. What changed your mind? She asked me for money. After you cut them off, she showed up with this whole sob story about you having a breakdown and leaving them stranded. She wanted $5,000 to cover Ezra's school. Trisha let out a bitter laugh. When I said I didn't have that kind of money, she told me to take out a cash advance on a credit card. That's when I knew she'd use anyone. I sat there trying to take it all in, feeling both sick and justified. Sick because I'd treated her like a daughter and she'd been mocking me behind my back all along. Justified because I'd known, deep down, that the birthday party wasn't some mix-up. It was on purpose. It was meant to hurt. There's something else, Trisha said, about Russell. I steeled myself. He knew what Jolene said, how she really felt about you. He was there for most of those dinners. Whatever piece of my heart still held out hope for my son gave way. It's one thing to be spineless, to get pulled around by a strong-willed wife. It was something else entirely, to sit there and listen, while that woman mocked his own mother and talked about how she could use her. He didn't say a word. I leaned in and whispered. He laughed, Edith. He actually laughed, like it was some kind of joke, how good Jolene was at keeping you in line. I got up and headed to the bathroom, where I immediately threw up. When I came back, Trisha had tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she said. I should have told you a long time ago. I should have been the kind of friend you could count on. I dropped into the chair, exhausted, like I'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Thank you for being honest with me now. For what it's worth, I think walking away was the right call. Cutting them off, I mean, maybe it'll force them to grow up a little, figure things out for themselves. But as I drove back home, I wasn't thinking about whether Russell and Jolene were learning anything at all. My mind was on Ezra and what kind of message all this was sending him about love, about family, about what we owe each other. That night, I did something I hadn't done since everything fell apart. I drove past their old house. The new owners had already moved in, and it barely looked like the same place anymore. The dried-up flower boxes were gone, replaced with simple, clean landscaping. There were kids' bikes in the driveway. I knew family was in there now, making new memories. I started wondering where Russell and Jolene had ended up, what Ezra's new school was like. If he missed his old home, or if he was adjusting the way kids tend to do. Part of me wanted to find out, to drive around until I spotted Russell's truck, or saw Jolene behind the wheel of a different car. But what would that even change? Instead, I went home and pulled out the letter I'd written to Ezra months ago. I read it again, then added something new. Your parents made their choices, Ezra, and I made mine. I chose to stop letting them walk all over me, even though I knew it would hurt you for a while. I hope one day you'll understand that enabling someone isn't the same as loving them. And sometimes, real love means stepping back and letting people face what they've created. I sealed the letter again and put it back in my jewelry box. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and, for the first time in years, really thought about what I wanted out of life. Who was I when I wasn't just someone there to clean up after Russell and Jolene? What did I want to do with my time, my money, my energy? The answers came slowly, but they came. I wanted to finally see the places I'd always pushed aside because I felt like I couldn't leave. I wanted to take art classes again, something I loved back in college but let go of when life got too heavy. I wanted to volunteer somewhere that actually appreciated me, not someplace that saw me as an automatic yes. I wanted a life that belonged to me, not one shaped around someone else's needs and drama. Finding out how Jolene really saw me hurt like hell, but it also cut the last thread of guilt I'd been holding on to. I didn't walk away from my family. I just stopped letting people treat me like a wallet with a heartbeat. Something had shifted. For the first time since that birthday party, I felt at peace with the decision I'd made. Russell and Jolene were still silent, but it didn't sting anymore. It felt like being let go, and that feeling, freedom, I was starting to see it was worth more than anything money dressed up as love could offer. A year later, I was in the kitchen making tea when the doorbell rang. I glanced through the window and saw someone I didn't recognize right away. A skinny kid with messy brown hair, shifting back and forth like he wasn't sure if he should be there. It took me a second, but then I saw it was Ezra. He'd grown a few inches, and his face had changed. It was less soft, more drawn in. He looked like a kid who'd seen too much too soon. My hands trembled as I opened the door. Ezra, hi Grandma. His voice was softer than I remembered, more cautious. Dad said I could come if I wanted. He's waiting in the car. I looked out and saw Russell's truck by the curb. Russell was in the driver's seat, staring ahead. He didn't wave, didn't look my way, but he'd driven Ezra here. That had to mean something. You want to come in? I asked, stepping to the side. Ezra nodded and followed me into the living room. He sat on the edge of the couch like he was ready to leave the second something felt off, and my chest tightened seeing how unsure he looked. How are you? I'm okay. That automatic answer kids give when they've learned to keep their feelings quiet. I like my new school. It's smaller than the old one, but it's fine. How's your mom and dad? Ezra's face closed up just a bit. They're okay. Dad works a lot. Mom's working at a restaurant. She's tired all the time. I had 100 questions ready to spill out, but the way he answered told me to slow down. So instead, I asked, you hungry? I could make you a sandwich. A flicker of a smile passed over his face. Do you still have those cookies? The ones with chocolate chips? I think I can find some. I'd actually made a batch last week, still holding on to this small, foolish hope that Ezra might come by. In the kitchen, while I laid the cookies out on a plate, Ezra wandered around the house like he was walking through an old memory. He stopped by the fridge, where I used to hang up all his school pictures and drawings. You took them down. He said it softly. The photos I'd packed them away months ago because they hurt too much to look at. I thought maybe you didn't want me to have them anymore. Ezra looked at me like he was older than he should be, like he understood too much. Can I see them? I pulled the box from the closet in my room and laid the pictures out across the kitchen table. Ezra studied the drawings closely, picking up one he'd made back in first grade, a simple picture of our family, stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. I remembered making that, he said. You put it on your fridge right away. It was beautiful. It still is. Ezra laid the picture back down and finally met my eyes for the first time since he got there. Mom says, you stopped loving us. The words landed like a punch. I sat across from him, thinking carefully before I spoke. What do you think? Ezra paused, biting his lip the way he always did when he was thinking hard. I think maybe you just got tired of being sad. His quiet truth stopped me cold. What makes you think I was sad? You always looked sad at our house, even when you smiled, like when you brought presents or came to my games. You looked happy, but there was sad underneath. I had to swallow before answering. You're very observant. Mom and Dad used to fight about you sometimes. After you left, Dad said Mom was mean to you, and Mom said you were mean first. But I don't think you're mean. Grandma, what do you think? Ezra picked up a cookie and took a little bite, clearly putting his thoughts together. I think grown-ups make things too complicated. One missed you, but Mom said you didn't want to see me anymore because you were mad at her and Dad. That's not true, Ezra. I wanted to see you every single day. Then why didn't you call me? The question I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that his parents turned him into a pawn, that sometimes love means letting go instead of holding on, because I thought it might make things harder for you? Sometimes adults have to make choices that don't feel good but might help more later. Ezra nodded slowly. Like when you made Dad get a real job. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? Dad works really hard now. He gets up early and comes home tired, but he's, I don't know, different. Less worried all the time. And Mom too. She complains about her job, but she seems prouder now. I looked at his face, seeing a maturity that hadn't been there before. Are you proud of them? Yeah, Ezra said right away. It was scary at first, moving and changing schools and all that. But now it feels more real, I guess. Like we're doing it ourselves, instead of ... Double quotes, he trailed off. Instead of what? Instead of pretending. The word just hung there between us. This little boy had figured out something that took me years. That the life I was funding wasn't real. It was a show. A pretty one. Built on someone else's dime. Ezra, I said gently, do you understand why I stopped helping with money? He nodded. Because they were being mean to you. And because they needed to learn to take care of themselves. Are you mad at me? Ezra thought about it. I was, at first. I missed my old room, and my old school, and having money for stuff I wanted. But then I realized I still had everything that matters. Like what? Like Mom and Dad, and my friends. I made new ones, and books from the library, instead of buying new ones all the time. He smiled, a little shy. And now I'm here with you. I reached across the table and took his small hand. I missed you so much. I missed you too. That's why I asked. I understood you were mad, and I wanted to see if you still loved me. The raw honesty of it brought tears to my eyes. What did he say? He said he'd been wanting to bring me for a while but was scared you'd be mad at him. Ezra squeezed my hand. Are you mad at him? I looked out the window at Russell's truck, where my son waited for his boy to finish visiting the grandmother. He'd helped shut out. I'm sad about some things that happened. But I love your dad, and I love you. What about Mom? The tougher question. I hope your mom's learning to be happy with the life she and your dad are building. Ezra seemed okay with that answer. We spent the next hour flipping through old photo albums and chatting about his new school, the friends he'd made, and how different life felt now. He told me about helping his dad with weekend projects, how his mom was showing him the basics in the kitchen, and how proud he felt when his teacher noticed how much better he was doing in math. The boy who used to get everything handed to him was learning how good it felt to earn things on his own. When it was time to leave, Ezra gave me a tight hug. Can I come see you again? Whenever you want, but check with your parents first. I will. He pulled back and gave me a serious look. Grandma, I think what you did was brave. What do you mean? You stopped pretending to. That's brave. As I stood there watching Russell's truck roll down the street, Ezra waving from the front seat, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Real peace. Not the kind that only sticks around when life goes your way, but the kind that sinks deep into your bones because you're finally being honest with yourself. I'd lost a son and daughter-in-law who only saw me as a bank account, but somewhere along the way, I'd found myself again. And it turned out, I hadn't lost my grandson at all. Ezra had come back to me on his own, with his own take on what had happened. 6 months after that first visit, he started showing up every other Saturday. Russell would drop him off and come back later to pick him up. And over time, those handoffs got easier. We never brought up the past out loud, but in Russell's eyes, I started to see a quiet kind of respect. Jolene never came with them, and honestly, that was fine by me. Some relationships just don't come back together, and pushing for some forced reunion only adds more cracks. But Ezra and I built something real, little by little, on truth instead of guilt. I showed him how to grow things, how to cook meals that mattered, how to handle money without wasting it. He showed me that love doesn't come with a price tag, and that maybe the best thing you can do for someone is give them space to find their own strength. On my 70th birthday, Ezra gave me a card he'd made by hand. Inside, in that careful handwriting of his, he wrote, "Thank you for teaching me that real love doesn't cost anything." I keep that card right next to the letter I wrote him back when we were apart, the one I never had to send because he figured out the truth on his own. That night, I sat out on the back porch with a glass of wine, listening to the quiet hum of life around me. Mrs. Callahan called over the fence to ask how my birthday went. Down the block, a young family was grilling out, their laughter floating through the warm air. I was by myself, but I wasn't lonely. I was on my own, but I wasn't cut off. I'd come to understand the difference between being loved and being needed for what you can give, and the version of me who once sat silent at a birthday party, too afraid to speak up, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who knew you can't buy your way into a family that really loves you, because a family like that would never make you try. The story we shared is fictional, but drawn from real situations. Names and places have been changed to protect those involved. We don't tell this to judge, but to offer a moment of reflection. How many mothers are silently suffering inside their own homes? And truly, if it were you in my place, what would you do? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or speak up to reclaim your life? I'd love to hear your thoughts, because every story is a candle, lighting the way for someone else. God bless, and I believe courage leads us to better days. While you wait for those days, I've left 2 other stories on the screen, our most beloved ones. I know they'll surprise you. Thank you for staying until the very end.